It's time to start talking about how the Second Amendment community can be affected as Proposition 50 and California redistricting continues to pick up steam and the ads are playing everywhere. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today, and I'm sure you've seen the ads. We are back on the topic of Proposition 50 here in California, also known as the redistricting of congressional seats here in the state. And to talk us through that today, we have brought back the legislative director of CRPA. You can also find him on AM 590 The Answer every Saturday at 1 p.m. on Firing Line Radio. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. But guys, before we get into that today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. We're trying to get this information out. After all, this is an upcoming vote that each and every one of us are going to have to go and cast at the end of this year. We're trying to get this info out as far and wide as possible. You can help us do that by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the video. So please, if you can take a moment, go ahead and do that. It really helps out. So Rick, before we jump too far in, because we have done a video already on the redistricting proposal here in California, we haven't really hashed out what it looks like for the Second Amendment community. We talked a little bit more about the lines that were being drawn at that time. But for those who haven't been following along, can you just go ahead and just address what is Proposition 50, what is it looking to do, and what is the purpose behind it for Gavin Newsom and the people who are trying to draw these lines?
Proposition 50, to be really clear, is probably the biggest lie, and that's saying something, for this governor to try to perpetrate on the people of California. It has been claimed, and he's had lots of speaking points and talking heads talk about how this is to balance out what's going on in Texas. And anybody that does any modest research will find out it's two completely things. It's not even both fruits. It's like an apple and a brick, not even an apple and an orange. And that brick is what's about to hit our Second Amendment community, because what this is designed to do is, we've been talking here on the channel, Kevin, for quite some time of like, we're actually winning. We're starting to pick up seats. We're starting to move things. There's been the elections that have come under scrutiny, both on the state and national level, where it showed that there were extreme irregularities that suggested foul play. That's still being tried out in the courts, so everything's alleged, but you can go to reports like the National Report and look at Table 5 and see that we had more dead people voting, more illegal votes, and there were 3.1 million votes cast in the 2024s that should have never been casted. They were actually bogus votes, which changes the outcome in several elections, and not in favor of the Democrats. And so as a result, they're starting to realize that some areas that they thought were, say, purplish are not. They're bright pink to almost red. Some areas that they thought were pink are definitely red. And there's some areas that they thought were really blue that are more purple. It could go 50-50 either way. So as a result, they're scared. And when you're scared, you often panic. And this is a thing to pull the wool over the people's eyes. You've talked in other videos about the redistricting, and anybody can go look and see how these districts don't match up. But what they're designed to do is take out 5 of the 9 remaining people in Congress. Why is that important for a 2A person? Because all 5 of those people have been fighting for the Second Amendment in Congress. They have been trying to help put pressure from a national level down. If they can do that, then California is no longer going to be beat up by anything on a local level. So that is one of the reasons that we're very concerned.
So you have these ads. I'm sure that you're seeing them. I'm sure all of you at home are seeing them. On both sides, they're really saying the same thing. We need to vote yes on Prop 50 to protect our democracy. We need to vote no on Prop 50 to protect our democracy. One thing on the vote yes side, obviously, is, they have the talking point of combating Trump and the redistricting of Texas. You mentioned that this is in direct retaliation, and I use retaliation because Gavin Newsom doesn't really make any secrets about it, and he's done it before with legislation. And I don't know why he's so fixated on Texas. It seems to be his favorite state outside the state of California. But back a couple of years ago, when Texas created an abortion ban bill, he copied that and made it an anti-gun bill in California, after slamming Texas on how awful of a thing it was. He's doing the exact same thing here as Texas looks to redistrict. But you mentioned that it's really comparing an apple to a brick. What makes one an apple and one a brick here when both, technically speaking, are redistricting in the state?
Okay, the reason that I would say it's a brick and not like an apple versus an orange is because the brick being Texas, Texas was manipulated by the Biden administration. It's very well documented. And this is after courts called out that redistricting plan that came through the Biden administration, that Texas had a right to redistrict, to go through that process and right the wrong. That's what's happening there. But because that righting of that wrong now would place even more people on the red side, Newsom can't help himself. And so he wants to use Texas as nothing but a shell to enact policies that he wants. And he wants three things. He wants to be president. We all know he's running for the presidency in 28. He wants to have a Congress that will be favorable to him so he can bring forward that new constitutional amendment to remove the Second Amendment. That's his long-term play. And for a lot of our people, they're like, oh, well, he didn't get enough votes the first time around. No, because he didn't have the people in that he needed. That's what he's trying to correct right now. He's trying to go around the country and change Congress so he has the people to get that amendment through. He's also doing something here locally. He knows that they're losing a battle here. The Ninth Circuit is siding with us more often than he has with them. Bill after bill after bill is being found unconstitutional. But one of the ways you win in this fight, even when you're losing, is you silence the people that are winning. How do you do that? Well, by redistricting, because what it does, and a lot of people don't realize it, they're like, well, Rick, this is congressional. It has nothing to do with the state. And that's where you're wrong. Because when you dump a bunch of money into a congressional race, believe me, all those operatives aren't working 24/7 on candidate X. They're working about 12 to 20 hours on candidate X, and then that remaining 20 to 25 hours, because they usually work overtime, goes to candidates downstream, meaning state senator races, assembly races, city council races, board of supervisors races. We are seeing that in key districts that they're targeting with this redistricting already. And over the next year, once this gets passed, if we don't stop this on November 4th, which is just a couple of months away, they've slammed this through. You got to remember, Kevin, people's rights were denied to get this through. Nobody, Democrat or Republican, had time to read this expansive set of bills and paperwork because the final draft with the final amendments were presented on the floor 10 minutes before the vote. And that 10 minutes wasn't spent speed reading. Staff didn't read it. Nobody read it. It was passed without ever being read. The people's voices were so disrespected that they wouldn't even give it a day for people to look at, for the media to look at it. Everybody's voice was silenced. The media wants to be quiet about it. Other people want to be quiet about it. We're not going to be quiet about it. We're going to call what it was. Our voice was literally robbed from us by this governor and his cronies. That enough should be a reason for anybody to say, if this is so important, do it the right way. Don't do it the wrong way. But this will be if not the final, it would be next to the final nail in our own coffin as a community, because if they're able to get this through, they're going to remove all the work we've done over the past few years to bring more and more Pro-2A people into the Capitol, because they will effectively have tied our hands and created it so that it's not a fair fight at all.
And you see a lot of people from our community really harping on the word democracy. It seems kind of interesting how specifically Democrat politicians continue to use the word democracy. But something that was democratically voted on in California was to have an independent commission do redistricting for the state every 10 years. I think just in talking with you off camera, that sort of seems to be the big differentiation between California and Texas. Californians have already voted to have an independent commission redraw lines every 10 years. And now we're going back on that and saying, hey, we see these guys doing something political, so we're going to try to combat them politically. But you shouldn't be telling us that we're preserving our democracy by going back on something that was already democratically voted on in the first place. I think that ends up being the disingenuous part of these ads that you see that are telling you to vote yes on Prop 50. And of course, guys, it's not just going to be here. It needs to be you. It needs to be you talking to your neighbors, talking to your communities. And Rick, I kind of wanted to get into this with you just kind of as a final thought. We're going to have to spread this word because there is a vote that's coming up. You already mentioned the date. If you could mention it again, what is it looking like as far as what you can see in the state going into November to vote on Prop 50?
Well, one thing is a lot of people think it won't go through. You have to make sure it doesn't go through. And it's November 4th. We're just a few weeks away. And so, right now we're coming up on the middle of September. So let's call that 3 weeks. October has roughly 5 weeks or about 8 weeks away, 2 months, 60 some odd days. We have to fight on every one of those days to defeat this because a lot of people are going to read the tagline, which I'll read it to you. I mean, the tagline on this is exactly the Congressional Gerrymandering Initiative or the Election Rigging Response Act. Proposition 50. It is neither of those things. This is designed to remove your ability, and it's not temporary. This will affect a minimum of 3 election cycles. And that is enough to gerrymander and make everything blue in the state when it's not blue. And we need to emphasize not blue. Here's the other thing that's really interesting. This is coming from the same politician that says the following. You know what? If you want to have a firearm, and let this sink into all of you that own firearms, you want to have a firearm in this state? We need to know who you are, where you live. We need to know what your background is. We need to know your character. We need to know how many firearms. Do you lock them up this way? Do you do that? I mean, it is a whole treasure trove of laws, and any of us that own a firearm know this. Oh, you want to exercise a constitutional right to hunt? You want to exercise a constitutional right to carry concealed? You want to exercise a constitutional right to... Oh, there's even more things we're going to throw on that. And they have to be checked over and over and over again. Oh, you want to vote? Okay, we don't care. What? That led to over 3 million votes in 2024 being cast that were illegal. They weren't real votes. They were from dead people, over 300,000, as was proven by a federal study. It's ridiculous of how many bad votes. And so at the same time that they're collecting and getting this Proposition 50 out, we're also collecting voter ID initiative. And voter ID does not mean that somebody who isn't a citizen can't vote. It means they have to have an ID card. My gosh. You can vote for how this country turns out, according to California's governor, but you can't exercise a constitutional right without ID. That seems a little backwards.
It does indeed.
I think this is where we got to call people out, and we no more being afraid to upset a neighbor. You know what? Call it what it is. Talk the truth. Speak the truth. Say you're okay to your neighbors with something that no one ever looked at, getting passed by a majority, and that's not the act of a dictator. Because the last time I checked, when the people have zero voice, that's the very definition of what's known as a dictatorship.
Well, I can feel the fire from here, and with a couple months left until this vote is actually cast, there's definitely an opportunity for us to continue and hit this. So we will be talking about it again. Obviously, as the landscape continues to change, so will the conversation. But absolutely, and I think you're hitting it square on the head. There are massive implications in this gerrymandering, and for it to be done against the will of Californians, it makes it that much worse. So we've got to stop this in its tracks. We're gonna continue working to do so.
Yeah, one more thing. Son, I've been talking to people because a lot of people are like, yeah, well, it's kind of like that. Give Newsom another chance. No, he gets no chances, zero, as far as I'm concerned. But it's even, you have to ask yourself this, even to your most uneducated friends that mean well, but they don't get it. You have to look at them and say, okay, so let's just say, for example, maybe Texas isn't playing fair. Why out of 49 states does the leveling have to come from a state that only has 9 Republicans and 40 some odd Democrats? Why is it California has to eliminate that last 9? Why couldn't 5 other states just change one district? Why does it have to be California? And no one's going to have a good reason for that. But then why would our California go? Oh, because he's running for president, because he wants this state lock, stock, and blued permanently. Because that way he doesn't have to worry about anybody from California talking about failed trains, talking about a homeless crisis that he developed and has carried on, talk about a failing fire system, failing water supplies, failing farming. This state produces over half the food for the country, and the rest of the country is going to start starving the way he's running it into the ground. None of those things will be held accountable in the 28 election if this gets through.
Well said, and again, definitely worth some more content later, so we will be revisiting. But Rick, I do appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the passion. We definitely are looking forward to getting some people fired up, spreading this message so that we can make sure that Prop 50 does not pass. But thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, one more time, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps get the message out. And this is a message that needs to get out. So you can really help by doing that. One more time, let's just go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one.